I think he could have said it half the words.
You think the dogs are going to shut up at some point?
Yeah, they'll probably give up. Just be sad.
I'm about ready to give up myself. So
never give up.
Never surrender.
Never surrender. And let me tell you something, partner. What was that? I had a little.
What the fuck?
I was like,
See?
Yes.
There they go.
That's right.
What are you going to tell me?
I was going to tell you that the last week or so, and I feel like I say this every time, I'm just like, was an exercise in pushing through my own depression and anxiety and soul-crushing fear of the future. And I got through it.
So basically a normal week.
Right, regular week for me.
Okay.
So maybe we'll talk about
For
that.
For all of us, maybe.
Talk about DopeyCon.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't talk about that last time, right?
No.
I think it happened just before. So
yeah,
some stuff to say about that.
Okay.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike ER.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, we discuss Russell Brand's magnum opus, Recovery, and try to suss out just what it is that Russell is attempting to say. And we wrap up DopeyCon and all things recovery. All this and more today on a very special edition of RMA.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Here we are. Do I sound, is this really loud? Or is that just me being loud?
I think it's just in your can is loud. Your cans.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here. We need to talk first, though.
Yes.
We need to talk about alcohol recovery in the workplace.
We do.
We do.
Okay.
Talking about sobriety and proving it to your employer can be so difficult.
I know.
And you know who can help?
Who?
Our friends at SoberLink.
Thank
Our
God.
friends at SoberLink want to help. If you need a reliable way to present documented proof of sobriety to a boss or a loved one, SoberLink can help.
All right.
Yeah. SoberLink is a high-tech portable breathalyzer system that uses facial recognition technology to verify your identity, so you can't hold the... You can have somebody else blow into the device for you.
It can also detect human breath.
Yeah, you could have, I guess people could have their dogs blow into it.
It's actually set up so that it detects if you have your Labrador breathing into it. It's true.
Yeah. Well, that ties into its second feature, which is that it has unique sensors to ensure that no other air sources are being used.
Right.
Like your cat, your dog, one of your kids.
What I said to Grant when he was talking about it, I said, wow, they really know alcoholics.
Right.
At some point in development, there's like a scientist and a technician going, wait a second.
Yeah.
Can this detect if some alcoholic gets his dog to breathe on it? And they're like, no, back to formula.
Well, they definitely workshop this, and it's definitely disrupting an industry. It also sends results directly to your specified contact. So if you want to put your boss on there, you could put your wife on there,
probation officer,
your probation officer, I suppose, anybody, right?
Yeah.
So there's no questioning whether or not you took the test and whether or not you altered the reporting. And that's why SoberLink's remote alcohol monitoring system is considered the gold standard of alcohol monitoring systems. Right. Being in recovery from alcohol does not define the future of your career or your life, for that matter. Let SoberLink help. You can learn more about SoberLink and request an exclusive $50 off promo code by visiting www.soberlink.com/middle-ages.
Hyphen?
Yeah.
Did they come up with that?
I guess.
Guys, maybe not the hyphen, but it's okay.
It's all right. We will put a link in the show notes.
The link will be in the show notes. And I'd just like to say...
and that's our advertising.
I'd like to welcome SoberLink to the RMA family.
I'd like to welcome our SoberLink overlords. I, for one, would like to welcome our SoberLink overlords.
Yeah, they listen carefully to each show and make sure we don't say anything,
Well, they
untoward.
actually asked me if I would clip the ad portion and send it to them.
Oh.
So they can ensure that we're not disparaging SoberLink in some way.
Oh, we would never. And in fact... I like this product. I like the idea. We first heard about it when Grant came on the show, I think initially, and said, I'm doing this SoberLink things, for accountability. He was just doing it because he wanted his family to know that, in fact, he was doing what he was supposed to. And it's a great way of verifying that. And
I never even thought about the, the work angle, right? Like, I guess if you're if you work in an industry that it's very important that you're sober while you're working. Yeah. So maybe not bartenders, but perhaps like truck drivers, delivery folks,
Yeah, sometimes you get in a situation where, you don't get fired when you have some kind of alcoholic meltdown, but they give you an opportunity, usually, depending on how naked you got.
They put you on probation, right? This can work as part of that. I don't know. It's a great idea. It's definitely a disruption in the typical industry of this sort. So, excellent.
Check them out.
That's soberlink.com/middle-ages. Okay. Right. And this episode is also brought to you by the Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon. What is a Patreon?
I don't know.
It's a members-only subscription service featuring Discord, private message, chat, and video. It's a meeting platform for all patrons. It's like having a recovery support family right at your fingertips. Members will also get extra mini-shows, pictures, video, exclusive merchandise for joining, and an added level of support for recovery. Go to patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages to learn more and sign up today.
I just posted a picture of Mike and myself at the studio, which we do to the Patreon, so you can get a bird's eye view on what we're up to here. Mike's got this amazing T-shirt on that I love.
It's not amazing.
I think it's amazing. It says, "We'll fix it in post."
Yeah.
So,
because that's what we do.
Post-production.
Yeah.
Right? So,
all of the horrible racist jokes and everything that get slipped by, where they just cut it all out. Slip by the censors.
Yep.
Sorry, we don't make racist jokes because we're not racist. So now I have something to cut out. All right.
Great.
Do you have something to say?
I just had one thing that I was really, really bursting at the seams to say.
If that dog doesn't shut the fuck up, I'm going upstairs and I'm going to wring its neck.
Welcome to all the Monksters listening stateside, around the world, down the street, across the table, and right next door. Welcome all. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready for excitement, comedy, tragedy, intrigue, mystery, and so much more. Where can they find us, Mike?
You said that my name in a vaguely threatening manner.
There was threatening overtones to the way
middleagesrecovery.com. Buy a T-shirt. Somebody did last week.
Yes.
Thank you. Podbean, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, the usual places. YouTube?
Yeah.
Does the show post there?
The show, if you prefer listening through YouTube, which a lot of people apparently do, our show is on. It's no crazy videos. It's really just the show, but you can listen through YouTube.
So I've kind of laid off posting videos the last few weeks because I went to Vimeo and I looked at our view count for some of those videos.
Yeah,
it's like 2, 3. I'm like, you know what?
But does it count like if we take the link and embed it? And it must, right? They can see any kind of play.
I think they see any kind of play. So if you guys want to see more videos, just drop us a note. You can email me at mike.r@middleagesrecovery.com because I have the equipment. I can set it up. It's just editing video it's like pulling fucking teeth. It's not as easy as just editing audio, which I can do this in like an hour. Yeah. But video takes a lot longer. So I'd rather not do it if no one's watching it. But if somebody really wants to watch it, I'm happy to do it.
Well, I like the idea of video, but it is a lot of work for, if not a lot of people are watching it. But for the future, I have this vision of us doing our show in a studio like this with real cameras, and we could, post the show on both.
I mean,
in the future,
I have the equipment. The equipment's not the issue.
We have the team. We got the talent.
It's the time. It's always time. I don't know where our recovery meetings are right now. Probably nowhere. So yeah, we'll try and work on that.
That's another thing. If you're a monkster out there and you want to get involved in recovering with your fellow monksters, we're doing a recovery meeting every Sunday, and schedules just kind of got screwed up. And so we're looking for a new time and for new participants to come and join us. We've got a great group, and I'm hoping to get there soon.
Yeah. So leave us a review. 5-star review would be great. The Apple Podcast app, please. You can tell us your story either through the website or call the RMA hotline at 516-888-6297. 516-888-6297. Leave us a 3 to 5 minute message to tell us your story. We haven't got one of those since May.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's because of our irregular schedule is causing listeners to run screaming to other recovery podcasts, which are more interesting and more regular.
Yeah.
Or if people are just a little shy about leaving a recorded message on a phone.
I'm not sure. I know that our downloads are in good shape. Like there's a lot of people listening more than before, maybe. And
more than before is good.
It's great. It's an improvement. So, yeah, reach out, guys. Be part of the show. We love talking about your stories, and it really adds a lot to the show.
It does.
Great reviews will be read on the air. You said that.
I did say that.
Okay.
It's time to tell the people what we've been doing with our miserable lives for the last couple of weeks.
What have we been doing? Well, the big one that you all know about was DopeyCon. I actually got, which is really like...
What's DopeyCon, Nat?
It's a addiction recovery entertainment convention centering around the Dopey podcast. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
You know? But that's really what it was. It was a lot of Dopey fans. It was all in New York City in this church. It was really cool. And I got to meet Jenny, who's the one that bought the shirt.
Awesome.
Longtime fan. It was so great to meet her. And it really and some of you monsters, you've had a couple of meetups. So like getting people in real life when you're used to just interacting, through your phone or, it gave me anxiety, but it was really great and really inspiring, actually.
That's cool, man.
And I got to see some of my favorite authors. Erin Carr spoke, and I was too nervous to talk to her. I'm such a schmuck. I don't know. It's like she was talking to somebody else, and I didn't want to interrupt. And I'm like, well, what am I going to say? I love your book. I mean,
what was the book?
It was Strung Out.
Okay.
Really good book.
Yeah.
She will come on the show.
Okay.
She didn't say yes yet, but it's funny because Dave
So come on the show.
Yeah. Dave said, he's like, you want her on the show? And I said, yeah. It would be great to discuss her book. I got to meet a lot of the Dopeites, the Dopey fans who were really there for me, before this show and, during COVID. Just people who are really just genuine, and I start to doubt friends like that, just when you don't meet them in real life, because I don't know, it doesn't seem real. Yeah. So to be able to meet some of these people who, I've been talking to and recovering with basically for the past couple of years, it was really cool. A little nervous. I had some social anxiety, but Joe Schrank spoke.
He was there?
Yep. Erin Carr.
Does he live in New York? I thought he lived elsewhere.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Also, they had Maya Zalowitz.
Right.
Zalowitz.
She's also said she would come on the show.
She's another one I think she took off after she spoke because I didn't see her. Besides that, Dave was there, of course, and he was the master of ceremony, so I got to pal around with him a little bit. And, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool, and it inspired me like, wow, there's a real community out there. There's people who are interested in this, and they want to recover. And they like podcasts. I mean, it was just really inspiring. Yeah.
Important question. Was there pastrami from Katz's?
Oh, my God.
That's good stuff.
So maybe the best part of DopeyCon was Dave had Katz's Deli, which is a famous Jewish deli from New York, if you don't know. It's been there a million years, and everybody raves about these pastrami sandwiches. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never eaten a Katz's pastrami sandwich.
How old are you? You've never been to Katz's?
I'm old enough to know better, yeah. Never been there. Oy vey, schmear. And, I got my first Katz's pastrami sandwich. And let me tell you guys out there, if you doubt how amazing these pastrami sandwiches are, doubt no longer, because it is as good as advertised.
It's a meat orgasm.
Oh, my God. It's almost like just sliced, like the best steak in the world, sliced really thin with mustard and rye bread.
Melts in the mouth.
So that was a lot of fun. And, thanks to Dave for putting that together. And we should do something like that. I don't think we have as many people. It's about a couple hundred people.
If there's pastrami, I will go.
Yeah.
To our own thing.
It was really cool.
So do you know Grant and Elizabeth met up last weekend.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. The Monkster meetup
up in Boston. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'd like to do stuff like that. I wish I had a little more time, but yeah, it's really great. People are getting together, and who knows, maybe we can get our lives together to a point where we can do a weekend, just great.
Yeah. Just something.
Some kind of retreat. I could use a retreat.
Yeah.
Hey, how was the Mets game?
Yes. So I went to the Mets game on Sunday night. It was, the game was terrible, because it was the Mets.
Yeah.
And,
Meet the Mets.
Meet the Mets. Step right up and meet the Mets. Bring the kiddies, bring the wife, guaranteed to have the time of your life.
Da, 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 da.
Remember that?
I do, but I am a Yankees fan, unfortunately.
Yeah, so am I. Right. But so somebody from the local parent group posted the tickets were available on the parent group. So I'm like, wow, $300 a ticket for wild card playoffs seems like a lot of money.
What kind of seats were they?
They were 300 levels. So I go on to StubHub and I find the same section seats available for 150.
Same section.
So we bought those instead. And shame on that person for trying to rip off somebody in the neighborhood. But
it's a shanda.
A what?
A shanda.
I'm not familiar with that Yiddish term.
It's a shame.
Oh.
Look at you. You're a shanda to your family. It's one of my favorites.
It's great. Yeah. So we went. My son, Dimitri, was home for the college break. They now have a break in the fall. They call it the fall break.
Wasn't he just
Yeah, 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
He left for college, and now he came back.
How's he doing?
It's a bit of a steep adjustment for him. He's having a hard time making friends, and classes work is a little challenging. And he didn't really do much in high school, like academically. So right. I think he finds the fact that he now has to write 5-page papers to be daunting. It's sort of like, putting a chimpanzee behind the space shuttle controls and saying, fly this thing, would you? Not that he's like a champion.
Nice.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Nice. I get it.
But anyway, so things got weird for me in the 7th inning. We're sitting there, we're watching the game, and it's a terrible game. The Mets are like collapsing as they're wont to do at this point of the year. And he's like, Dad, can you buy me a beer?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
So of course you didn't. You told them alcohol is bad.
I would like to say that I said absolutely not and all that. But I looked at it this way. It was the 7th inning. Beer sales end at the end of the 7th inning.
Right.
I don't keep alcohol in the house at home. So best case scenario, he drinks, and we were going to leave at the top of the 8th. He drinks half a beer, throws the other half in the garbage, and we go home, and he gets to feel, so like a baseball guy for 20 minutes. At least this was the thought process going on in my head when I went up to the counter to buy the beer. Which, and part of this, I also wonder how much of this was me just wanting to live out my fantasy of being at a baseball game
with your son,
and going up and buying a beer. There's a million places to buy beer. There are not too many places to buy soda, and it's just fucking ballpark soda. It's gross.
Yeah.
They had a huge sign in the outfield, Heineken 00. Not a single place did they sell it in the stadium.
Seriously?
Yeah.
They're just advertisers, but they don't sell it.
Advertise it, right? So I buy a Corona, and because it's the end of the 7th inning, I had to pee also because I'm a middle-aged man, and it's the 7th inning, and I was stretching my bladder basically. And I said, so I bought the beer first, and that ended up being a mistake because then I had to walk around the concourse with the beer in my hand, open because they open it for you.
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
And I'm looking at it, and it's sweating, and it's looking really good, and it was a nice Corona tall boy. And I go into the bathroom, and the stall opens up. All the urinals were full. The stall is open. I go in, I set the beer down, and it's just me and the Corona in the stall with the door shut.
This is risky behavior, Mike.
Yeah.
Risky.
And I started sweating, I started thinking, okay, I'm sitting.
Nobody's looking.
Right. Nobody would ever know if I just took a big slug.
Yeah.
And, just a slug. Like I wouldn't have to, tell anybody or reset the timer or the clock or whatever, and I in the time it took my ancient bladder to start working, I had kind of worked through the thought process and got to the point where I was like, this is a stupid idea. It's very stupid of you to have A, bought this beer for your son, B, carried it into a bathroom and locked yourself in a stall by yourself with a giant sweaty beer. And C, to even think about, to start drinking at a Mets game of all things where they were losing.
That's when you drink. That's why Mets fans are alcoholics.
Certainly the two guys behind me were. It's no question. Yeah. It was funny though. Everybody was really rowdy and all like full of life until the second inning, and then nobody.
What, it just got boring or something?
It was boring.
Yeah, it's baseball. Boring. I mean,
but I brought the beer back. I gave it to him, and it transgressed. I mean, it proceeded exactly how I expected.
Well, it's good that you
took a few slugs off the beer, threw it away on the way out, and went to bed when we got home. And I remember sitting in this very seat 2 months ago, excoriating my sister-in-law for buying a drink for my other kid,
right?
Or not buying, but like giving him one of those hard seltzers.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's 14, right? And
Big difference.
To me, there's a difference between 14 and 18.
Especially a kid in college. You just assume there's no drinking age when they go to college.
Well, and the postscript to that story, or the prescript to that story, is the day he got home, the next day he and I drove around looking at guns. I'm like dad of the year. We just went to a couple of gun stores because I was looking for a 22 for target practice and stuff. But we had a very frank conversation about drugs and alcohol, and it was really more than he really opened up about like his pot use in high school and the amount of drinking that he did in high school, which, contrary to appearances, apparently wasn't all that much. And and how he doesn't really like alcohol and stuff. And he's a funny kid because he's not like, he won't lie. Like if I ask him like,
he just lies by omission.
No, if I ask him like, what is he doing in school? Is he smoking? Is he drinking? He'll tell me, like he doesn't, he won't change his behavior in response to anything I say, say to him.
He doesn't volunteer it though. I mean, he doesn't say, "Hey, Dad, I had a."
Actually, he was sort of volunteer. The thing is, like, I'm a little worried about him, and a lot of kids his age, boys especially, who came through this COVID situation and were in high school and were isolated for a couple of years, and from the chatter on the parent group at Scranton, I can tell that he's not the only one that has this stay in the room and not meet people kind of thing. Like when I was in college, the idea of staying in a room was like anathema. Like my door would be open. I mean, there was no,
especially when you're in the dorms, your first year, you meet all these people at orientation, throwing the hacky sack and introducing yourself. Sack. Where are you from?
Yeah, that's what he calls like schools like Bennington beanbag schools, and I'm like, is that from hacky sack? Like I'm trying to figure out where that's from.
Maybe beanbag toss.
I don't know, but so I don't. So he's not going out at school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're almost like, I wish he would kind of like get out there a little bit, even if it meant
not too much
having a beer.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel a little funny about it. We got home and because Erin was like, I don't think she was happy about it in the beginning because she was there too. But he asked me, he didn't ask her because he knows that I'm the softie, I guess. And
yeah, I get that too.
Yeah. And then I told Erin, I said, I almost drank that beer.
Yeah.
And, I don't know.
I mean, I don't want to say you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong.
I shouldn't have. I don't know if it was wrong, but I shouldn't have done it. And I don't think I'm going to do it again.
I probably wouldn't. But, the good thing that came out of it, and I had a similar experience. I wasn't in a Mets game, but the ability now for you to sit there in that scenario and actually talk yourself through it.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I couldn't have done that 5 years ago.
Same here. The craving and the impulse completely outweighed any kind of thinking I could do. And so that's the good news. But, were I your tandem sponsor, I would tell you.
I should have called you.
Yeah,
but I
should have called me from the bathroom. I'm in the stall.
I'm looking.
I would have said, probably not a great idea. Maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
But I understand, what you were doing though. And I might have done that too, because, I have the same thing, this romanticized idea of a father and a son sharing a beer. You're at a baseball game, seventh inning stretch. Here you go, son.
Right.
And you're yearning to connect with Dimitri because, he's going away to college and you're trying to kind of work your way, so that and that might have been a good thing, because maybe, as much as I would initially say you shouldn't have done that, maybe that was a gesture that he'll remember in a good way.
That's what I was hoping.
Because you're coming across the table to him. You're saying, listen, I don't drink, I don't believe in it, but I know that you like a beer, and here's my peace offering. It's cool,
Right.
Let's be real.
Yeah, that was my hope anyways.
Yeah,
I did it for communication building rather than, any desire I had to turn him into an alcoholic.
Right, but then your sponsor might say, but is it worth the risk to your sobriety to pull something like that off?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it didn't even cross my mind that it was going to be something that would kind of smack me in the side of the head like that.
Yeah.
Because I've been to so many parties where there's alcohol served, I never even give it a second thought. But all of a sudden, I was giving it a second thought, which was weird.
Well, yeah, you had all the ingredients,
yes,
baseball, sun, bonding, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you came through it, and we should really be calling each other when we're getting in these scenarios. I had a similar problem. Let's say I woke up Monday. It was Columbus Day. And I had to work, but the kids are off, Christina's off. Mm-hmm. And I can't explain it. I woke up and I felt like I was underwater, physically, it was the weirdest feeling. And I was just out of it. And as I went on to ad nauseum last show about how much I've got going on, it began this process of I wasn't feeling good. Mm-hmm. So then I didn't do that first thing I was supposed to do that day.
Smoke crack,
right. And first I had to buy a stem from the gas station. It was the whole thing. I needed a Charboy.
It takes forever.
So I was it was this snowball effect. And I almost knew it was happening. And Monday went by and I didn't do shit. And nothing I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I literally, which is really hard because there's so much, but I completely shut down. And at first it was fine. I was like, okay, I'm just going to give myself a little time, And then the next day, Noah didn't get to sleep the night before. He woke up screaming or something like that. He had a nightmare. So I didn't sleep that great. I felt a little better, but the depression and the feeling of anxiety and being overwhelmed to the point where if you're 5 feet underwater, you can see the top. You can almost get your finger there. I felt like I was at the Marianas Trench, just no way out. I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? And even my business partner said something to me. I think it was Tuesday. He goes, you all right? What's going on, I'm very honest with him. The guy's a psychologist. And,
you can't lie to your psychologist.
And I do not lie to that guy. He returns the favor. I never wonder what he's feeling at any given moment. And so he's like, we're just, because he knows that I'm in recovery. So, of course, the first thing he's thinking is, I put my whole business in this guy's hand.
and he went out and...
At the most important point, this is probably the most crucial, 2 weeks so far, because we're moving on the 1st. And this is when I decide to, have some kind of meltdown or, And so he's clearly, what's going on? Did you start drinking again?
He asked you that?
He did.
Wow.
And then he, of course, apologized immediately. And I said, no. I said, Mike, don't apologize. I completely understand. That's fine. I'm here to tell you that I am not drinking. I'm having a really rough time. I suffer from depression, which he knows. And I said, it goes in cycles. The difference between me today and 5 years ago is I would take that opportunity to drink or use.
Right.
And now I don't. I just cry by myself in the bathroom. And so it was, and then Wednesday came. And every night I went to sleep. Let me tell you, each night, because I knew I had to get myself out of this. I said, I'm going to die. I have too much. I can't be like this. So I prayed every night. I said, God, please, God, please, I need to get back on top of this stuff. Please help me feel better. And then I did a lot of visualization of me like being happy and active.
Fake it till you make it.
And then I'd go to sleep. But the next day, Wednesday, I just wasn't quite there. And some of the repercussions of not doing certain things Monday and Tuesday came back at me Wednesday, and I kind of checked out. And it was like, I would call it a sober bottom. We were talking about this a little bit, like, when you're sober long enough and you can hit a bottom.
You sure can.
Meaning like where I was just a couple of days ago, I felt like, and one time though, because usually I'll just say to myself, oh, this is usually when I would use or drink. But this particular morning, I started to think, nothing else is working. What if I just had a beer?
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was like...
I didn't see a text message on it.
No.
Either that.
Oh, no.
So we had a hell of a week, the two of us.
I know. This is exactly when I said... because you do the thing, I don't want to bother him. I don't want him to worry about me. But we're supposed to worry about each other. We're supposed to reach out. And that would have been a good time to do that. But like you, I talked myself out of it. I didn't go as far as grabbing the beer or anything. But I really was thinking about it. For about 10 minutes, I'd say. And then I shook it off. I said, what the fuck is wrong with me? And I did what you did. I talked myself out of it. I went over all the stuff. I replayed the tape back. And, and I made it through. And today, I drank enough coffee. And
that does not sound like a good way out of this dark forest. Just to pour caffeine on it.
I just got to drink coffee. And finally, around 10, 11 o'clock, I called my partner. I said, Mike, I'm back. He goes, oh, you sounded completely different. He goes, what happened? You just from 4 hours ago.
I almost relapsed.
I know, I almost relapsed. And in any case, it was like, I feel like these sober bottoms, it's like, that is the time to reach out. That is the time to engage in your online community, to call your sponsor, to call a friend, to tell your mother. Sometimes I just call my mom and Mom, I'm having a rough time. And, sometimes it helps,
So you would consider yourself a sober bottom rather than a sober top?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Just
I knew you were going to make a joke about that. So that was it.
Well, funny side note on Dimitri, though, it just occurred to me. Do you know what book he was assigned in his literature class this week, his writing class, to read?
Catcher in the Rye?
Nope. Mackenzie Phillips' High on Arrival.
Shut the fuck up. Seriously?
Yep.
Wow. What class is that?
I think it's a writing class. Yeah.
It's a class called Books Your Father Read on His Podcast or something.
I said to him, if you want to talk to Mackenzie Phillips, I know a guy that has her phone number.
Yeah.
He just looked at me. He was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that's actually a really good book. It's a really it's a traditional memoir.
I would like to try and get her on because she's good.
She might do it.
I think she would do it.
Well, she's very active professionally in recovery from what I heard on our last interview. And I think that if we reach out in earnest or, our friend who knows her, maybe she would. And her book is great. She's got a hell of a story. If you guys don't know who Mackenzie Phillips is, Google it.
Any of you Gen Xers or Boomers that like to watch One Day at a Time, it was the show with Valerie Bertinelli. She was the other sister. And
it's poetic that now she's this big recovery person, and her show was One Day at a Time.
Yeah. Right. That's it. Did Dave mention that? Anyway, if you guys want to hear a really good interview with her, check out the last two she did on Dopey. They're fantastic. It's one of my favorite interviews that he did. Oh. Also, one last thing before we move on to this Russell Brand business. I had the weirdest fucking dream the other night. And I know when people say, I'm going to tell you about my dream, this is the time that most of our listeners would probably go to the fridge and get a kombucha or something. But the dream I had was, for some reason, I was up at your parents' house in Oyster Bay Cove, where I have never been, I might add.
Do you want to give them their address, too?
I don't know what. Oh, yeah, shit. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Nobody's going there.
I can take that out if you want.
Yeah.
And now I've just drawn attention to it.
Yep.
So now I have to take this part out too.
Ding, ding, ding.
Now it's fucking a whole 30 seconds.
But now it's funny. We should leave it.
Yeah. Anyway, I walk into the house and your father's there. And I met your father 2 or 3 times.
And you've never been to the house,
I've never been to the house. Okay. And he's wearing his raincoat, which he tends to wear this lawyer raincoat, right?
Yep.
But he offers me a beer and I take it. and I drink it with him, and I'm drinking beer with your father in his house.
Huh.
What do you think that dream means?
Wow. Wow. I used to be pretty
Your mom
good
was there too, but she was not really...
I don't want to hear that part of the dream,
wasn't,
please.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like that.
I'm pretty good at explicating dreams, but this one I would have to. Well, we were just talking about my dad on the show, and we were talking about the mother's milk and how he just idolizes these beers, and
I know, but
so we were just talking about it.
I mean,
you did meet him one time.
You know what it was?
What?
I think the fact that I saw him and your mother in the supermarket
wearing a raincoat
right around the same time.
Right.
He just took up residence in my head. Old lawyers tend to run around in my head.
Yeah, old lawyers die hard.
Well, you know your dad better than me. All right.
Oh, God. That was so terrible.
Yeah, that's what we do here.
All right. Well, I don't think I had anything else to add to any of
What
that.
else can one
I went
say?
to Adventureland with the PTA.
Did you now?
Did you go last year?
Yes.
But this year I was...
You went last year too.
Right, but this year you were not there.
No, I don't have a kid in Vernon anymore.
Understood, but we could have hung out. I don't know. Should have invited you.
It's the worst haunted house ever.
It is awful.
Did you go on the spinny roller coaster, the green one?
Turbulence?
Yeah.
Yes. I like Turbulence. It's not that great, but nothing there is. It's all very mediocre.
Yeah. It's one step up from Carney stuff.
They should call it Mediocrity Land. It just doesn't have the same ring.
You know what? It's good for kids up to age 11 or 12.
I had one of my first dates at Adventureland.
Did you? Mm-hmm. How did that?
It went great.
In the haunted house?
We didn't get married though.
No.
So I guess it didn't work out.
Little making out in the haunted house?
There was not. I was a good boy. We were just holding hands and walking around.
Oh.
I think I might have been 25 or something. No. This was 12 or 13. In any case, so Adventureland with the PTA, I saw all of my old customers and lots of parents that are in the schools, So it's always fun and anxiety inducing to see these people, and they're always asking, "Oh, what are you up to? You open up another sports store?" I love that one. No, did not do that. I am not that stupid, but so it was fun. The kids had a blast. Oh, the thing I wanted to touch on, was that my youngest Max. This was really for his grade. It was a lot of the younger kids are all friends with Max, but my older son, Noah, really wanted to go with us. And I'm trying to foster a better relationship between them.
Wait, he wanted to go to
Adventureland.
To Adventureland,
With
okay.
us.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, man. Is any of your friends going? And no, they weren't, because it wasn't really for the Vernon kids. I mean, for the kids in the other school.
Yeah.
But I was really impressed with how and I always do this with Noah. I tell him to be little daddy with Max. I need you to be like the big brother, but like little daddy. Like the way I treat him when I'm not around, you treat him that way, I always just try and say that to him. He never says he will, but I actually felt like I could see the interaction. He started to take Max around to some rides.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, man. And I just my heart was swelling. I'm like, this is what it should be,
You're a lucky man because...
It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, I'm happy.
Ever since Dimitri moved out, the dynamic in our house has completely changed.
Yeah.
Because Jack now is
he's the man.
He's the guy, and he and Ben are been going at it like cats and dogs.
Wow.
It's crazy. I've had to tell Jack enough, lay off the kid, and it's weird. And then Dimitri came home and Jack quieted down and retreated to his room. It's so weird, that dynamic.
Interesting.
But one thing I forgot about that I also wanted to talk about that's not family related. I don't know if you saw we have a Oyster Bay East Norwich parents Facebook group, where everybody gets on and does their insanity.
Yes, it was the parents.
So somebody posted today. I don't know if you're familiar with the restaurant Danny's Izakaya.
No.
It opened where the sushi place was, right across from your store.
Oh, yeah, they went out of business.
They went out of business, right? So a guy in town who I know fairly well from scouting and other things said he was very sad to see our small town have restaurants like Danny's and gourmet places like this other place closed down.
Sports stores.
He didn't mention you, right? And then a new smoke shop pops up. Have you seen the new smoke shop?
Not only have I seen it, I bought vape juice there. The guy that owns it used to go to the high school. Nice guy.
You're talking about the place in the CVS shopping center?
No. There's one there?
Yes.
Oh.
So now we have 2.
Okay.
There's one there, but
Score.
it's just full of bongs though. And like drug paraphernalia.
Great.
Yeah.
Now the kids don't have to drive to Utopia to get that stuff.
So the community is up in arms over it, as you can imagine.
The pearl clutching is absurd.
Listen, I'm clutching pearls. I'm not happy with this store in the neighborhood.
Nobody goes over there.
Well, all the kids are going to go over there.
So we have 0 sports stores and 2 bong shops.
Well, yeah. My comment on Facebook, because I'm a fucking masochist and I can't just leave this shit alone.
It's not a good look for the town.
Says it's easier to buy a bong than a bowl of rum and an Oyster Bay.
Than a bowl of rum. Oh, bowl of rum. Yeah. I mean, that ramen place was a cool idea.
The ramen was good, actually.
Yeah, I had it a couple times. Yeah, it sucks. Well, this town is extremely difficult to be successful in, but
I mean, that's something that has to be dealt with, because I'm sure this place is going to be selling like Delta 8 products and all that other kind of stuff that's not, you know.
Yeah, it's like we don't need that in this town. Like it's already, I don't know.
It's just, I mean,
you know it's going to do great too. Like it's the thing that everyone says they don't want, and then it's like super successful, and that's why there's 2 of them.
Well, the guy who opened it is smart, because half of it is like cigars. And so this is a very cigar chomping town.
Yes, it is.
You know. So I don't know. I'm not thrilled with the idea of, you know, all that paraphernalia being able to, because from what I heard from Dimitri, like there was quite a pipeline from the place in Syosset, the next town over from us, that sells the Delta 8 and the Delta 10. Like people were buying all that stuff up there and then shipping it to Oyster Bay and selling it at a profit. Like kids in high school had a little business going on. So I assume, you know, there's all these underground markets and economies that, like, for example, your son is selling gum.
Right.
And so Ben has now ordered some kind of candy because he wants to start becoming a candy magnate in high school as well. And I'm like, is this just basically like training wheels for drug dealing later on? You know, I'm a little worried about that. But
it's funny you say that, because that's the first thing I thought of when I was at CVS with Noah, and he goes, "Oh, can you buy me a few packs of this, like 24 packs of gum?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you doing with it? Why do you need so much gum?" And he told me, he's like, "Well, you know, I've got this business, and you know, kids love this flavor." And I'm like, on the one hand, I'm like, it's the entrepreneurial
exactly
spirit that, you know, screwed me so hard these last 25 years. But you know, I thought it was cool, and then on the other hand, I started thinking, wow, this sounds a lot like a drug dealer, you know, because they have to do it clandestinely.
Yes,
because it's not allowed.
Right.
So here I am encouraging this illegal behavior. Yeah, I don't feel great about it. I don't know.
You know, it's candy and they're kids, and sometimes I wonder if we don't maybe put a little too much of our own mental stuff on them when all they're trying to do is like make some money selling some chiclets, you know.
It's true. Yeah, I definitely am putting all my shit on them for sure.
Sorry, I keep, you know, I sent you one thing for the life update, and all these things keep occurring to me.
What's next?
Okay, just got a quick one. And I don't know if Noah's mentioned any of this to you either, but Ben went into the bathroom and he said there were kids vaping.
Well, Oyster Bay High School.
High school.
Right. And, well, you knew that was happening.
He called me right away.
No kidding.
Yeah, he told me that.
Does Noah know? And he just didn't tell me? I haven't seen him.
I don't. No, this was like a week ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I was really happy by the fact that he picked up the phone and told me right away, rather than be like, "Yo, let me get a pull off of that."
Yeah, that's great. But like, you know, Noah would have been like, "Let me try one."
Yeah. So I had a frank discussion with him about, you know, vaping and stuff, and you know, which is all you can do.
Yeah,
you know.
You can't.
But I'm trying a different tactic with the youngest one than I did with the older one.
Yeah, we'll get it right with our younger ones. Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for.
Me too. Anyway, that's all. I just.
So vaping in high school, all this and more.
But who knows what they're vaping, though? Could be anything.
That's right.
Dimitri did tell me, he said, and here I am just going on and on, but he did tell me that in our frank conversation about drugs, that he's like, there are kids that just were vaping like really super high-powered weed in class because there's no smell. And when the teacher turns around, you just do. And he's like, some of these carts, they call them, which are like
the little
cartridges with, he's like, very few of those are actually from a dispensary. Like they're made in people's basements,
right?
And
that's
they have God knows what's in them, you know.
That's a problem. That makes me nervous. Thank you for telling me that now, because I'm going to worry about it. I should have realized this, but yeah, that's, I guess, what I'm really worried about is, Noah getting into THC from something as innocuous as, what looks like a regular vape, which is still shitty, and I don't want him to do it, but it's,
right.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't like any of it.
The high school just doesn't have a good handle on how to deal with these problems there. And I realized this when, Dimitri's year, their reaction was they would hire a bunch of ex-cops who would like kick the doors in and like pretend they were on SWAT, and give these kids like, and I don't know if that's the answer either, but
they should probably just search the kids when they come in. They should have a metal detector, like it's Wyandanch or something.
Yeah, but it's like it's Oyster Bay and it's not prison. And,
true.
I don't know.
But if you ask Noah, he'll say it's just like prison.
What do you guys think should be done, or how's the high schools by you? Send me an email at mikeR@middleagesrecovery.com. If any of you have had kids go through high school who have dealt with this kind of stuff, or how your schools are dealing with it in the disparate parts of this great land and great world where you're listening from. So, shall we take a short break?
Yes. We'll be right back with our main topic discussion, Russell Brand's book called Recovery, after these words.
For like 10 seconds and then just went right back into our chairs.
You're lowering the veil. You got to keep the, don't give them the backstage. We were just talking about, we're discussing Russell Brand's book, and I was reading his bio, and instead of comedian, I said comedian, and it made me think of all of those feminized words that are going away. Actress, waitress, stewardess.
The actress thing is something I noticed recently.
Yes. What is this?
Everybody's an actor now.
Right. Why is it a problem to designate a person's gender? I don't know. I guess that's the problem.
See, I find it problematic that we're calling everybody actors. Why don't we call everybody actresses?
Right.
Why can't the men be called actresses?
Agreed.
See, there's misogyny. There's misogyny baked into this idea that we're trying to get away from misogyny.
Yeah, and you can't get rid of masculine and feminine in like French and Spanish. There's the
just watch them.
You have feminine words. They can't all be androgynous, guys. It's just the way the languages were.
We're just heading towards androgyny.
Yeah. I don't love that idea.
I'm going to identify as Michelle from now on.
I don't know. I'm all for progress and for inclusion, but I loved the interplay between two opposite genders that like kind of made life interesting.
Oh boy, you're stepping in it. Do you want to get canceled?
No, please don't cancel me. I'm just thinking out loud, guys. In any case, on to the book discussion before I do something I'm going to regret.
So, somebody recommended this book to me. It's okay. This is a little bit of a backstory here. There's a woman who I am friends with on Facebook. She's an attorney in upstate New York, and she's very active in the adoption movement. And so, we're Facebook friends. I've never met her in real life, although I have actually spoken to her on the phone and asked her for some recommendations for different types of attorneys in that area, for friends who need, whatever matrimonial attorneys, because that's the area she practices in. But on Sunday, she did a classic burning of the ships post on Facebook where she said, I just want to let you folks know that I've been sober for 7 years. And she went into this whole thing about, how mommy wine culture is bullshit and all this other stuff. And it was very sort of Annie Grace focused. So my assumption was that she was not a 12-step person. And I sent her a private message on Facebook saying, I really appreciated your posting and gave her a little bit about my story. And she's like, well, have you ever read Russell Brand's book? And I said, no, it's been on my list forever, which it has been. And I think you would.
Yeah, I read it a while ago.
Yeah, and I think you
proposed
it as a topic of comment. And I was like, I don't.
Yeah, you scoffed at the idea.
I scoffed at it. But it got me interested in it. And then I downloaded the audiobook. And listen, I'm sure this is a very good book to read, but Russell Brand reads the book himself.
Yeah.
And there's nobody like Russell Brand reading his own oeuvre, his own work. You definitely, play a sample of what he sounds like, or what the book's.
I did this under guidance. Having completed your inventory to the best of your ability, you then share it with God, yourself, and another human being. This is usually your mentor or guide, or at any rate, someone you trust who is further down the path you hope to.
All right.
It's just like
we don't want copyright problems.
It's like a 500-page run-on sentence, basically. Drives English majors crazy.
So for those of you who don't know Russell Edward Brand, who was born on the 4th of June in 1975, that's probably too much information.
Wait, what's his middle name?
Edward.
Oh, just making sure.
Okay.
It's very important.
He's a comedian. He's an actor. He's known for his flamboyant, loquacious style and manner, his extensive vocabulary. He's definitely a smart guy. He was a stand-up comedian. I actually watched a little bit of a stand-up special he did in 2018 last night to sort of prep for
Was that
it.
a recovery-centric one? Because I know he did either a TED Talk style thing or has a whole act where he talks about his recovery. Was it something like that or just straight comedy?
So the 20 minutes I watched, it was a little bit about sex, a little bit about recovery, and a little bit about politics, which is kind of where he's at these days.
Interesting.
With the thing about Russell Brand is I think if you know him, you either love him or you fucking hate his guts, because he definitely provokes strong reactions in people. But he's also been sober for, well, at the time he wrote the book in 2018, he was sober for 14 years. So now 18 years of sobriety. And he was a heroin addict and an alcoholic and a sex addict, and got sober through the use of Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step groups. And he wrote a book about it. And I think the focus of his book was sort of to try and put the 12 steps forward in a more secular but still spiritual way, and to sort of strip away some of the mold that of the 1930s and 40s that had sort of patinaed the program, and just sort of give it a bit of new life, if you will. I don't know necessarily how successful he was at that, but
it's got a workbook and everything.
It's got a workbook. There's steps to do, but I was kind of all in the beginning. Like the introductory chapters I found to be really interesting, because he has a sort of an expansive view of what spirituality is, and an expansive view of like what the universe is. And
there's definitely nuggets of brilliance.
Absolutely.
Like there are certain times where in between the meandering stream of consciousness, you hear something. Well, for me, I heard something where I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, you just nailed it. But there's so much.
A lot of nuggets of wisdom in there. But I mean, at the end of the day, it really is a pretty traditional 12-step program, sort of rewritten for the modern era. And although I do like the way he recharacterized the 12 steps, but just generally, like some of the things that didn't sit right with me, and I'll talk about maybe the things that I didn't like, and then the things that I did like. Maybe we can go somewhat like that. Like, I mean, he goes through this whole thing of how the 12 steps have really sort of changed his life, and and it's inarguable that he's no longer like a drug addict and stuff, but his life is a bit of a train wreck in other areas. I mean,
he talks a lot about
divorced his wife. He was married to Katy Perry.
Right.
He sent her a text message to divorce her over text. He got very anti-vax, and he's really into conspiracy theories. Now on his YouTube channel and stuff, he thinks the Illuminati sort of controls everything, and I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying they don't. So he has kind of a confrontational style. It's steeped in a little bit of egoism and narcissism, which considering that's his whole idea of what addiction is that he says that at the root of all addiction is narcissism. Like if you're self-absorbed, you're suffering, and if you're suffering, you seek to stop the suffering with drugs and food and alcohol and sex. Basically, classic he puts forth the idea of classic addiction whack-a-mole, right? Like you can get a hold of your alcohol problem, you can get a hold of your drug problem, but it's going to pop up in other areas.
Right, then I eat chocolate.
Right. Well, chocolate was a big one for him.
I can't stop eating chocolate. Addiction is when natural biological imperatives like the need for food, sex, relaxation, or status become prioritized to the point of destructiveness.
We could just play the book.
Yeah, we should just play the book. But I really like that. I like that angle, because we go for that. I mean, that's part of our program. The fact that addiction is about all of these impulsive behaviors. So he definitely nails it there.
Well, I love the following sentence because this kind of tracks with what
Can you read it,
what our friend Evan Haynes was saying about, in his book, Can America Recover? That addiction is exacerbated by a culture that understandably exploits this mechanic as it's a damn good way to sell Mars bars and Toyotas. And in my own blessedly garish addiction, each addictive pursuit has been an act of peculiar faith that the action will solve a problem.
Jeez, put a comma in there, or split it into two sentences.
Well, that's the thing when he reads it. Oh, and I listened to it on 1.3 speed, and it's just like...
It sounds like Russell Brand on coke. Exacerbate it.
Imagine that guy on crack. Holy shit.
So, he takes the 12 steps. All right, let me ask you a question to propel us to the next point. My question to you is, from your perspective, how has this book been presented to us as a product? Like, did he write this book to say, here's my new program, loosely based on the 12 steps?
No.
Or is his whole shtick, here's me explaining to you how the 12 steps work, and here's another way you can understand it?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
I think it's at its core, it's an extremely traditional way of going through the steps.
In different packaging. And for me, that was a little disingenuous. I felt like, boy, he really thinks he's pulling one over on these people just by being a little funny, using big words, and just talking about the same 12 steps, And that's kind of what it was. It was like, here's my view on the 12 steps. And then it's just... And it's good, but I don't like the idea that it's presented as something new or different when it's really just his take on the 12 steps.
It is, and some of that left me a little bit uncomfortable when he was relating specifically like the anecdote of he had a friend who was an actor, I guess, and she had gotten into drama school and she was a heroin addict, and every time she would get into this prestigious drama school, she would relapse, and this happened like 3 or 4 times, and Russell would let her sleep it off in his house and stuff, and he tried to help her with 12-step meetings, but like there was never any discussion. Like what this woman clearly needed was some other sort of intervention, like perhaps medical intervention or perhaps some other kind of psychological intervention. But I mean, his friend was literally dying with multiple relapse and no push towards medication, no push towards other therapy when the program fails. He was just saying things like that you hear oftentimes in these 12-step groups, maybe they're just not ready to engage the program, or maybe,
really they just need a psychiatrist,
or maybe they need some more psychological help than what you can offer in a church basement somewhere, So he's definitely an evangelist for 12-step, which, is fine, right? I mean, it clearly worked for him. He's been off drugs and everything for almost 20 years. But it's still got that us versus them.
Yes,
it's flavor running through it.
And I knew you would point that out, because I know that to you that's like the worst thing. Like the fact that this is the only way. He does a lot of talking, which is the same stuff I heard in AA, which was true stuff. And it is that your way didn't work. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have to put the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. Just do what we say type of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that. And again, he's not wrong. Like, but we had this conversation before. Like when I was in an acute, addiction phase, I couldn't think my way out of it. I needed to have somebody else think for me. And that's kind of where he was going.
That's all well and good. But you also when it finally stuck for you, it was when you had the buprenorphine and stuff that to manage the cravings and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm listening to this whole book, right? And he's going through all the steps and I'm thinking, this is really good stuff. I don't know if this is a good way to stop using chemicals, but it might not be a bad, sort of auto-therapeutic thing for people to do. Maybe a little further on down the line, once they've got their, got some time away from the substances they've been using, because then they can really sort of engage in stuff like this. But then like he gets into all this stuff about his which is the step where you have to make amends, fifth or sixth or
Amends
seventh?
is the ninth step.
Ninth, okay.
Eighth is when you make the list. Fourth is when you list all the shit you did.
Eighth and ninth. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, my God, like reaching back into your past and contacting all these people and doing this is the most narcissistic fucking thing I can imagine, because you're not, yes, it says unless taking such steps would hurt, the other people, but how do you know that? You're arbitrarily making the decision as to whether you think it's going to be good or not for this other person to sit there and listen to your confession. So, look, I get
it's a huge part of 12 steps.
I know
so
it is.
He has to be that
way.
I
know, but
he's got to be that way.
I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think it's a bad idea to sort of try and, even the karmic scales, but the way that they suggest, and then to the little script that you're supposed to use, where you sit there and you say, I am an addict and and as part of my program, I have to do this.
It's very administrative.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He's
Christ.
like, this part is a bit administrative.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get. I do not want to sit here and bash.
Well, we've argued about this in the past.
For whom this has been a model of success. All I'm saying is that he says he makes an awful lot about how culture and trauma drive addiction. But
are you seeing parallels
12-step rooms are not the place to explore layers of trauma.
You have prayer, you have confession, and then you have good works.
Yeah, I get it.
Right?
I get it.
That's
it's not subtle.
No, it's not.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about, the thing where you, step 4, you list all of your wrongs and things done wrong to you, and they have categories and sexual, and it's uncomfortable, and I hated doing it. And just like he says, he'd rather, I forget what he said, but it was like the one thing he didn't want to do is this 4th step where you list all the things you've done and that have been done to you that you have resentments about. And on first listen, I have that same reaction, like, ugh, what is the point? We're rehashing all this stuff and it's bringing it up. But I also know that there is a power to talking about these things that you just never talk about, that are just sitting under the surface, that maybe you haven't thought about but are bothering you subconsciously. And sometimes just the act of writing it down or telling another person, that's the whole program, one alcoholic talking to another.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. And I don't know.
That's fine.
Maybe it's good.
But at the base of that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find your character defects.
Right.
So the implication is that there is something wrong with you, and that something that is wrong with you is what is fixating you in your addiction.
Are you saying there's nothing wrong with there was nothing wrong with me when I first went into
I'm saying you are not a bad person.
True.
And I'm saying you were a person that made some bad choices, and those bad choices sort of snowballed on themselves, and all of a sudden you found yourself addicted to certain chemicals. I don't know if you need to make a list of, like in his case, he made a list of the fact that he was angry at his mother because his mother got cancer when he was a kid.
Right.
And, basically it was sort of an exercise in self-flagellation.
Isn't that what you do in therapy though? Anyway, isn't this a way where you go?
Do you go to therapy and blame yourself for all these things?
What I do is, when you go to your first therapy intake or whatever, you sit there and you give them everything. You tell them, "Here's my life. This is what I did." And so I think of it in kind of those terms, but I could see where it could be detrimental to be bringing all that stuff up.
To be constantly
to make yourself feel
focusing
bad
on your flaws instead of your strengths and your hope and your potential.
But as an exercise in discovery, which you would appreciate as an attorney, discovery, you got to see it all so you can figure out what happened and how to not do it again. But I think it's overboard. I agree.
I think I mentioned on there's a book or program called The Artist's Way, where you sit down with a piece of paper in front of you in the morning and you let your mind sort of dictate what you're going to write, and you're supposed to do 3 pages a day, and it's almost like automatic writing because your subconscious what comes out of it.
Tim Banal.
Now, to me, that seems like a more useful exercise than picking apart your character defects. But I can understand the structure of the exercise and why that might be a useful. If you are so out of touch with who you are,
you have to examine what happened to help you get out of it.
But I mean, a good 6 months of meditation and you're kind of able to see that stuff inside your own head anyway. But
getting a newly sober alcoholic to meditate for more than 1 minute a day is usually not easy. I speak for myself. I had a hard time.
So what I do like is the way he took the 12 steps, which, and the way they're written in the big book and everything, it's very sort of Judeo-Christian 1930s, Protestantism.
Because they were Protestant Christians in the 30s.
Yes.
But it reflects that.
Well, I mean, Wilson was also an acid head, but that's beside the point. Let's see. So he changed the steps. He says, step 1, are you a bit fucked?
Yes.
Right?
So he rewrites, just for the audience, part of the book is he does his own 12 steps, right?
Right.
And he just writes his version of it.
But I think it's worthwhile to go through them. Are you a bit fucked is step 1, which is, your life is unmanaged, what's the first step of AA? Your life is unmanageable. You're powerless over alcohol. Your life has become unmanageable.
Yes.
So he distilled that to, are you a bit fucked? And then
you a bit fucked?
Second step is, could you not be fucked? And then 3, are you on your own going to unfuck yourself? And then write down all the things that are fucking you up or have ever fucked you up, and don't lie or leave anything out. And then honestly tell someone trustworthy about how fucked up you are. And then number 6, well, that's revealed a lot of fucked up patterns. Do you want to stop it? And then 7 is, are you willing to live in a new way that's not all about you and your previous fucked up stuff? Right? So you get the idea, right? Like he's stripped away are you entirely willing to allow God to remove your character defects and all that?
He's trying to cut through what might be preventing someone to really resonate with the Alcoholics Anonymous book by could you be not fucked, or are you fucked? He's just getting to the point.
Yeah.
Are you going to unfuck yourself?
Yeah, and then it goes on from there, but.
Are you a bit fucked? What does he say? It's a 5-point guide to the cycle of addiction. 1, pain. 2, using an addictive agent like alcohol, food, sex, work, dependent relationships to soothe and distract. 3, temporary anesthesia or distraction. This is interesting, actually. 4, consequences. 5, shame and guilt, leading to pain or low self-esteem.
That's basically how he defines being fucked.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Right? I mean, so which is very similar to what Gabor Mate has to say about addiction. Has a purpose, and the purpose is to avoid pain. Right?
Exactly. That was Mate's. I think one of his major points was that we're really. Not why all the drugs, it's why all the pain. That's what he said.
Right. And and Russell Brand says that, and it's really under the third step, but he relates a story where a counselor at a treatment center where he got clean, who was a woman in recovery, he said he was surprised when she said to him, how clever of you to find drugs. Well done. You found a way to keep yourself alive.
Yes. Yeah.
That really jumped off the page to me.
I like that. Yeah. He really said he felt he liked hearing that, he, instead of saying you were bad and you did horrible, immoral things, it's sort of like the therapist or I think it was somebody at the recovery house was just like, way to go. You got yourself through that.
Addiction was the protector.
Right.
Right. And isn't that what, that's also what Evan Haynes said, right? That addiction, or he went into this whole thing where usually you would visualize addiction as a demon, but he visualized it as somebody he was talking about visualized it as an angel, as a protector.
Yeah.
Because it protected you from that trauma and everything that you were submitted to as a child.
Yeah, it's a really counterintuitive way of thinking of a possessing or disrupting spirit, where he's basically saying that the spirit is trying to protect you, not screw your life up by saying, no, here, you take this,
right?
Try this. This will make you feel better.
Which is really a different sort of way of looking at addiction. But if you look at it through a psychological lens, I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, pain is a signal, right? It's some aspect of us that's beyond our narrow conception of self. Like a pain in the leg means don't put pressure on the leg. A pain in the mind means change the way you live. And sometimes you change the way you live by covering up the pain in your mind with drugs and alcohol. And then at some point you realize that that's not sustainable anymore.
What does it mean when you have a pain in the ass? I could think of a good joke to finish with that. And I love that line of thinking that, like, your body using pain is trying to tell you something. You know, like you said, you cut your arm. Guess what? Your body's telling you, hey, you're leaking.
Right.
You know, or, you know, so everything that goes on, but he's taking it a step further, not just like pain, physical pain, but when I'm depressed, you know, what is my body trying to tell me? You know, what am I not doing, or what am I not getting enough of?
Yeah. So, you know, he defines it, and he, you know, assuming you agree that you are powerless, you move on to, could you not be fucked? Right. And he goes on to try and convince of the existence of a higher power, and why that is such a sticking point for people. You know, and he goes through a lot of the mental tricks to sort of redefine things as higher powers that, you know, may not be higher powers, but he says, like, in order to sort of expand the definition of a higher power, he says that he believes that the mystery of creation and the laws of the universe hold great power. The innate love that human beings have for one another is power. People's willingness to suffer for a cause is power.
Yeah.
Healing of an injury is power. The music of Mozart, the Sistine Chapel ceiling.
Why does he abbreviate Mozart Maz?
Or Maz?
That drives me crazy.
I don't know.
It's Mozart.
All those allude to a power that is greater than me. The chances I've had in life, the people who have loved me and have been there for me. There are many examples of a power greater than myself alone with my addiction and my thoughts. You know, I kind of like that. That's sort of the way I would conceptualize a higher power.
Yeah.
You know?
Mine's wearing a robe, has a long beard, sitting in a cloud, throwing lightning bolts at people.
You know, which is weird because lightning comes from the ground up.
Aha.
So maybe heaven's
he's
under the earth. I don't know.
He has to come to terms with a higher power because he's in the 12 steps. So I guess this is his way of, he's trying to, and you also have to think of this, folks, as this is Russell Brand selling you recovery.
He almost sold me on that one, though, because I really liked that definition. And then he finishes up that area by saying, look, I don't have to ally with this higher power yet. All I have to do is accept that my thoughts and I are not the apex of human experience, which, you know, if addiction is a disease of narcissism, then breaking the idea that you are the pinnacle of human existence, that's why you need a higher power.
Right, humble you.
To humble you.
You know, and this is a major sticking point for people. This is why he talks about this. When they see God or someone sees higher power, a lot of people don't take kindly to that. They don't believe in God, or the God they believe in, like, killed their parents or something. You know, Everybody has something to blame God for. You know, what I used to tell people I'm working with in recovery when the God thing comes up is I said, well, listen, we're talking about a power greater than yourself. Usually I go with, think about the ocean. You know, is this greater than you? Does it control things you can't, you know, like, that's a power, just so they can conceptualize what
I can use the ocean as my higher power? Or
gravity is a big one.
Gravity is my higher power.
Usually when I go to gravity, if there's someone who's just not going along with God, that usually a light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, because it completely controls your life. It dominates every aspect of daily life for everyone. You have no control over it.
But then you have to ask gravity to remove your character defects.
Yes, you would.
Is it just going to suck them into the center of the earth?
So that's a great point, because a lot of other people will say, oh, just use a doorknob.
Yeah.
And that was always my retort, what you just said. I said, what, are you going to pray to a doorknob to forgive you? But the point of using something like that is just to get them in their foot in the door. Thinking in terms of you're selling something, and you've got an objection. And in sales, if anyone out there has been in sales, you have to push past the objection. So these are just tactics to get somebody's mind open enough to accept the possibility that there may be something greater than themselves. And sometimes that's a very tough nut to crack.
You know, I never really looked at it that way, that I just sitting here right now, I drew the connection between the narcissism inherent in addictive behavior and the idea that you have to think of there's something greater than you.
Yeah. I think that pretty much sizes it up. I think that's generally the reason for, I mean, there's also people who really do believe in like a God that's conscious and everything.
But you know what? That's a big ask.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like people, it takes years of therapy for people to get beyond their own limited way of looking at the world.
Right. Which is why it's so many people struggle getting on board with this stuff. And it's very difficult, which is why programs like Smart Recovery are so great. You know, because there's a whole bunch of people who just, the minute they see the G word, that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just a tactic of helping somebody understanding their place in the universe, which is not that powerful, like relatively speaking. There are much bigger forces.
Yeah. So, you know, because he says basically like when you get to the third step that if you strip away the reference to a divine power in the third step, it basically becomes you don't know what you're doing. You better make a decision to accept help. And that's a stumbling block for many people, right? What's the third step? Like,
third step is...
Sorry, it's not a quiz.
Oh, because now I don't remember. First one is your life has become unmanageable. Second one is believed in a power greater than myself to restore me sanity.
Third step is we're willing to
ask God to remove
I
really don't remember.
Okay,
yeah.
so
wow, it's been a while. And then he talks about the King James Bible. Why is he talking about King James?
What page are you
on? People are always telling you there's no guidebook to being human, he says, but there are loads. The problem, I think, is in translation.
To it.
How do I make the complex King James desert books and lurid and beautiful text of India sing to me in my solitude? How can we, accustomed to living in 5-second slices of mindless life, reach back through millennia to hold hands with Vishnu or sit in acceptance with the Buddha? Like,
in the world I'm from, no one suggested that anything other than material means could provide me with a solution.
Yeah, so he muses on this idea of, you know, and a lot of this is him. I feel like it's stream of consciousness and with some editing, right? I mean, that's kind of what's going on here. Like he stream of conscious, like vomited this book out, and then the editor was like, "All right, let's make this into something," you know. And so there's a lot of that, but sometimes I like that. I have to be in the mood for it.
I really,
you know, sometimes I can go along.
I love his vocabulary. He's got a great vocabulary, and he knows how to structure a sentence, and he can just go.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, he goes and goes.
You think it's a little too, or the language is too ornate and too twee?
I think it gets in the way of a very important message. You know, he's a little but I'm talking stylistically. The content of the book was great, but for my money, I like something a little more like the New York Times. You know, sentences and commas and periods sometimes.
The Times is written at a 7th grade level. Is that it?
No, it's not.
Yeah, you haven't
heard that before, but
the New York Post is written at like a kindergarten level or something.
My 7th grader does not read the New York Times.
But I don't know, man, because I don't know. He seems to, I guess, blind squirrel, right? He seems to stumble upon all these great little nuggets.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
It goes like something like a sentence like, "My problem was not alcohol, heroin, crack, bulimia, or sex, but a twisted system of beliefs brought on by trauma and shame that had become the basis of my unconscious program for living."
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly right.
Right.
I mean, I think the thing is he's very good at defining the problem. I just don't happen to agree with him on what the solution is.
Right.
100%.
But far be it from us to tell someone who, like, I love the idea that Russell Brand got sober and he's writing a book to say, this is how I did it. And here's how I think you could do it too.
Yes.
So I love that, but that doesn't mean it worked for us, or maybe it would have. Maybe if I got this, 10 years ago, I would have a different podcast, or something.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to, honestly, so we were just talking about like confession.
Right.
And they don't characterize it as confession, but I think it's apropos. When you're talking about all of the things that you've done, your innermost fears, all of that stuff. And we were just discussing how is that actually helpful? And so he talks about that here. He says, I'd never before acknowledged the role of fear in my life, that many of my behaviors were unwittingly governed by fear.
Absolutely.
That my fear of rejection led me to seek out relationships that precluded real intimacy. That my fear of inadequacy meant that even friendships with other men were fraught and unconsciously guarded, semicolon. That my fear of being alone meant I bound people to me who were not positive influences in my life. I love, fear is such an important part of my recovery and addiction. And I talk about it, all the time. Usually I'm talking to myself and I'll say something like, oh, that's a fear-based decision. But I'm always thinking about, a lot of my meltdown early this week was really just fear-based. It wasn't anything that was happening to me. It was, oh my God, what's going to happen? Someone was telling me that there's anxiety and depression, and the way that you can think about anxiety is fear of the future.
Right.
And depression is some sort of malaise over the past, or some sort of reaction to the past. Actually, that was my psychologist partner. And I thought that was really an interesting way to think about anxiety and depression. But if you can live in the moment, because right now there's no tigers chasing us.
Right.
We're going to be okay. We don't have to fight or flight, so lose the fear.
Most people don't live in the moment, though. They live in anticipation of something bad happening in the future or ruminating over the past. But let me ask you this. Do you think that people who suffer from addictive behaviors are generally more fearful about life than others? Or do you think that the human condition is really to be in a constant state of low-grade fear about things that we can't control,
I think it's something that we all share as a species. I think that we have evolved to survive using fear, and that in some of us it's gotten out of control more than others. I think we're at a point in our evolution as a species where we're not all on the same path of evolution. Some people, you meet some people and you're like, wow, they're really evolved, you might say. Because sometimes I'll speak to somebody and I'll go, wow, they're on another level, thought-wise, spiritually. And then there's, so I feel like everybody has a different level of fear and how they use it or suffer from it.
You think
so, I don't
fear
know
and trauma tend to accompany one another, right? I mean, because if you've been traumatized.
So do addicts probably have more fear? I mean, it's a good bet, but I mean, I don't know. I know I have quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've
often thought about how much fear was the driver of a lot of decisions that I made in my life, like roads not taken and all that. But I try not to ruminate on that because there's nothing I can do about it. Right. I mean,
fear, and for me, it's also procrastination. Laziness.
That's also fear.
So good point, because I'm a procrastinator by nature and I fight against it every day. And
there's a reason you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
What is
fear of success, fear of failure.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
And I see it in my son, Noah. I'm trying not to project all of my bullshit onto him, but man, I see it.
Yeah.
And even today, when I finally pulled myself out of the doldrums, I called Noah just to see how he was doing. And actually, my wife wrote to me, call Noah and tell him you love him, which is weird. Because I don't usually, I don't know, it means something is going on. And he sounded like the way I felt just yesterday. And I started to think, man, I hope he doesn't have that same, that fear, procrastination, anxiety that felt like it was built into my system, But so I just tried to talk to him. I said, Noah, the way you're feeling right now is exactly how I felt for the last 2 days, I said. And I just talked to him about how I felt, because he could, the same thing we do with other alcoholics. I said, here's how I felt. And I said, and here's what I did to try and pull myself out of it. And I think it really went a long way, hopefully I'm not humanizing myself too much to him. You still want to be dad, you know what I mean?
Right,
but
right.
I feel like those opportunities where you can commiserate and say, you know what, I went through that too. But it makes me nervous. So if he's got this innate, what if we're born with a type of anxiety and fear that makes you use, and I pass that on, that's my fear. There you go. Another fear.
Yeah. I mean, there's a limited. The thing that I've come to realize, with my older son, and is right. You can you can really want something for someone, and you can want somebody to end up a certain way, or you really, but you have no control over that. I mean, you can guide, you can suggest,
right.
But so I heard a quote last week that resonated with me, as somebody said that 100% of the advice not asked for is criticism. And I was thinking, you don't agree?
I mean, maybe I do. I mean, I'm just not following. 100% of the advice you don't take,
That you don't ask for.
that you don't ask for, is
Criticism.
Criticism by whom?
Like if you're giving someone advice that they didn't ask for, you are criticizing them, I guess is a different way to say that.
I gotcha. Unsolicited advice is usually something my dad would do to tell me I've gained weight or something. Yeah. Just pointing things out.
I don't know how germane that is when you're trying to set an example for your kids, but I guess my point ultimately is you can control nothing except yourself.
Aha. That is a huge
Right?
point. We could even end on that point. I don't want to, but that's like the North Star right here.
Right.
You just hit on this idea.
And then what happens if you're a narcissist? Then you're totally fucked.
Right, because you have to accept that there's most of what's going on in your life is not under your control.
Yeah, all of it.
And those things, you have to just disabuse yourself of the notion that it's worth stressing about, because there is nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can
right?
do.
And so that's a huge takeaway, I think.
No one is in control.
Yeah, you got to accept. I mean, for me, I'll speak for myself. When I'm super healthy mentally and spiritually, which I'm trying to get back to that, but I think in those terms, like something is going on that I can't control, like the dog's barking.
Dog. Yeah.
Listen, what am I going to do? Run up there and punt him into the sun?
That's what I was considering.
But once you really buy into your own bullshit, let's say, and say, I can't control it, there's nothing I can do, and it really doesn't make you anxious, then you've gotten somewhere. And,
yeah.
I mean, you can never do it for everything, but I think that's like a huge takeaway.
But it's extremely hard especially with your family, because you want to control, right? Because they're, when the kids are very little, they just listen to you and they do whatever you tell them, and you get used to that, and then when they get older and they decide they don't want to listen to what
you don't
you're
know
telling
so
them
much,
anymore,
Dad.
all of a sudden it's very hard for you to sort of readjust the way you deal with them. And I think it's a similar thing for a lot of other people in your life, spouses, whatever, there's a lot of things that I wish my wife would do differently. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that she thinks about that she wishes I would do differently.
Yeah.
And the surest way to unhappiness is to get mad at somebody because they're not behaving it the way that you want them to behave.
Ding, ding, ding. I'm so glad you said that.
Oh, damn it. It's the wrong.
There
it is.
I love that point because I've thought about this quite a bit. Must have been a couple of weeks ago. I said something to my wife, or I mentioned something, or I told her about something I was doing that I thought was cool, or something like that. And I didn't get the reaction I wanted. Let's just say that much. It was not what I was hoping for in her reaction. And at first, I got really upset. Of course, I don't say anything. I just put my head down and walk away. But, I was like, she didn't give me what I was looking for. But I didn't really tell her.
How does she know what you're looking for?
Right. What the fuck does she know? She just thinks I was telling her about something that she doesn't care about. It's one of my hobbies,
Right.
And what I was looking for was not what she gave back, but it wasn't fair for me, and it didn't make sense for me to be upset about that. But once I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to be happy if I'm always expecting something that you're not going to get.
Right.
And that you frankly haven't asked for.
Right.
And so that was kind of a big turning point in the way I was thinking about just my relationship. I have to be fair about what I expect.
Yeah.
From a friend or a spouse or a cat.
The flip side of that is when people do something that rubs you the wrong way, 9 times out of 10, there's no intent behind that.
You're talking about the foot spa? Oh, that's rubbing you the right way.
I don't know. What goes on at that foot spa in town? Do you have any idea?
Probably foot massages.
Yeah. Do you think that place is legit?
I'll tell you this. One day I was passing by and I saw a disheveled businessman with his hair messed up wandering out of there looking dazed.
Huh. You think they drugged him and then Gave him the old rub and tug?
I don't know what they did, but he was certainly happy they did it.
Huh. Interesting.
That's all I know.
Maybe they gave him a good foot job, so to speak. But so like having unreasonable expectations for people is also an issue, right? Like,
but even if they are reasonable to you, like for me,
that's to you,
to me, right?
Yeah.
Like my reasonable response would be, "That's so cool, honey. I'm so happy that you're enjoying something stupid." I just wanted to be pat on the back. That's all I ever want, But it's unreasonable because she doesn't care about whatever the hobby is, and she doesn't know that I'm like yearning for this kind of pat on the back and this acknowledgement for something,
Yeah, but everybody likes validation and good feelings, right? I mean, but it is hard to have expectations and have them, not met. Right. I mean, that's just.
But my unhappiness was coming from the expectation, not what she was giving me back.
And that, I guess, at the end of the day, we're each responsible for our own happiness, right?
Yes.
Other people can't make you happy. Other people can't make you sad.
I think we should end the show on that. That's the best point of the day here. But
you have to, because and I think this probably comes up a lot in like Al-Anon, right? When people who are married to addicts or have sons and daughters who are just out there running amok, and it's driving them crazy. It's making them miserable. It's ruining their lives. Mm-hmm. Or is it? Or are they ruining? Or what is the basis of that?
Yeah, they say detach with love.
Right.
I think a lot of Al-Anon and monksters out there who are in Al-Anon, you could chime in on this. The detach with love, and they talk a lot about, and correct me if I'm wrong, not being able to control, because it's very common, I'd say, in relationships where there's one person suffering from addiction,
right,
that other person is constantly trying to control them because that's their way of trying to stop it or make it better. And it becomes this like really toxic environment for both people, one trying to be controlled, the other one. Now they might say to you, well, if I don't, do this and check my husband's cell phone, he may be texting his heroin dealer. Okay. Well, guess what? If he's going to text his heroin dealer just because you're not looking at his phone, there is a bigger problem. Mm-hmm. That is not going to stop it. He's not your 14-year-old son, even though you might think he behaves like one. And just trying to be that adult to detach and say, you know what, it's your life, and I'm going to support you when you're looking for it. But that's very tricky. A lot of people say they go to Al-Anon and then they get divorced because they're basically being told you need to get out, protect yourself, protect your kids,
right,
and that sort of thing. But yeah, you can only you can make yourself happy,
right? I mean, it's also a big ask if someone whose life is being basically destroyed by another person's act
to just
abuse,
look the other way.
Because usually there's finances that are tied together and stuff. So it's easy for us to sit here and pontificate about how your happiness is your responsibility. But, there are external forces that,
right.
So what we're talking about here is really like getting to the point in your head where you can detach in general, like not just from a difficult situation, but you have to sort of look at the world with detachment.
Yeah.
Not like an emotionless detachment, but just disconnect from the outside world for a little bit.
Yeah, and I find I get a bird's eye view, when I try and do that.
I mean, it's meditation is what I'm talking about, right? Like to sit there and with no distractions and try and put some space between you and the stimulus and the response, so you can sort of look at it in a different way.
Yeah. I love it. With that, I think we're going to cut it.
Okay, yeah.
Because I feel like we can talk about this on the next show.
Into this.
But the big takeaway for me is when we talked about fear and fear-motivated decisions, mm-hmm. and being happy and accepting your life as it is and learning to be happy with that, and,
so what do you think? You recommend the book?
I recommend it. I think it's an entertaining listen. If you have any interest in recovery whatsoever, which most of you do, I hope, since you're listening to this podcast, I think you'll like it, especially if you've been through the 12 steps and you've experienced AA throughout your recovery. This is a really fresh, interesting, overly poetic, flowery, retelling, basically.
You really don't like this guy's... as an English major, I think you were offended by the way he communicates.
It's like, God, it's just on and on. And I get it. It's, I have to be in the mood for it. But it's actually really well written as far as, he does write with a thesaurus.
Listen to it because the English accent is part of the pleasure.
Yeah, and I couldn't pull off the Cockneyed accent. I apologize for that. I'm working with my dialect coach now, and hopefully by next week. So with that, recovery in the news. Yeah! All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. A motherfucker. Yeah. Nice. Take the show on the road. It's recovery in the news.
Yeah, it's recovery in the news. What else would be in the news this week?
Recovery.
Recovery is indeed in the news.
You know what I love about the news?
It's recovery. In it. I just dropped the outline, so I'm making word mouth noises until I get to the... Okay.
Mouth noise.
So Slate.com is often provides me with a number of interesting takes on things. Sometimes takes can be shitty, and sometimes there can be good takes. And
you could take a shit, even.
Yes.
I thought you were going to give me the baboom.
I almost did, but I realized that I had a toilet.
Or in the next one.
So, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably realize that this week Joe Biden pardoned anybody who had been convicted of a federal crime involving marijuana. Simple possession.
I have been living under a rock because this is the first I'm hearing of it. And when I read the outline,
seriously?
I really hadn't heard that. I've been so disconnected. So go on. Give me the news. This is where I get all my news.
So he pardoned, it was like 6,000 people who had been convicted of marijuana, previously been convicted of marijuana possession charges now. And perhaps more importantly, he's starting to look at rescheduling marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug where it lives with such luminaries as...
cocaine?
No. Cocaine is actually a Schedule 2 drug because it has a medical use, as does fentanyl, which is also a Schedule 2 or 3.
Interesting.
Marijuana and LSD and mushrooms and
all the good stuff.
Something else are Schedule 1. The hippie drugs, because it was causing too much social disruption. So Nixon decided that he was going to put them in Schedule 1 drugs. And then he formed the DEA, and the rest is history.
Dirty hippies.
Anyway, Slate has a different take, and stoners across the world rejoiced. But this doesn't do anything to affect the state convictions, right? Although Biden suggested in his speech that state governors follow his lead and expunge.
So the Democrat ones will, and the Republican ones won't.
Maybe. I mean, the cannabis issue tends to be cut across party lines.
Yeah, because
to some degree,
Republicans and Democrats alike all want to smoke pot.
It's true.
It's one thing they can get behind.
It's the only thing they agree on, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Slate. The title of the Slate article is "Why Biden's Marijuana Pardons Are Not Enough."
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny thing about Biden, I'm reading this story and I'm like, this fucking guy, why does he hate pot so much? Like, he just doesn't know anything about anything. He's an old guy. He's out of touch. And then I remembered that his son Hunter,
with a hell of a book, by the way, that memoir, really.
No, we tried
really
to get him on the show, but
it lined up with Dresner's show.
Yeah. Him dealing with his son completely colored the way he sees drugs.
Yeah. It has to.
And so for him to take even this step from a personal level had to be huge.
Yeah.
Or he just is completely incoherent and somebody said, just say this on Thursday. I mean, who knows?
From the book that I read, the Hunter's book, and from what I've heard, in interviews and things like that, to me, it sounds like, at least the way it's being presented, is that they have a very close relationship and they've talked a lot about the process of recovery, and Hunter has become somewhat of an advocate. I know some of you out there, approximately 47% of you, hate him and think he's the worst. But
right.
From just a perspective, you strip away all of the political bullshit. I mean, he's an addict that got clean, and it's a really it's a dark story. I mean, I'll put it up against any memoir. I mean, it's gritty.
Did you read the book?
Yeah. Oh, I listened to it, but
I'm going to listen to it.
It's very good. But, I think that Joe Biden probably does have a pretty good, if he hasn't forgotten it, I think he does have because of Hunter. So that's
why I think this was a difficult call for him, because he, anything that makes drugs easier to access is probably not something he's going to be in favor of. And he's a teetotaler and a non-drug user, And
he's 82 or something.
But I found very interesting that Fox News chose this week to release a voicemail that Biden left on Hunter Biden's phone. In 2018. The Daily Mail, I guess, was the first one that got it. He expressed love and concern for his son, who was battling substance abuse addiction at the time. It's Dad, I'm calling to tell you I love you. I love you more than the whole world, pal, Biden said, sounding emotional. You got to get some help. I don't know what to do. I know you don't either.
Oh,
very supportive.
Okay, that put a tear in my eye.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really...
The fact that Hannity tried to embarrass him with it is just deplorable, but that's another thing.
Kidding. Yeah, they go after him, and it's so fucked up.
You don't like the policies, that's one thing, but
the guy had substance use disorder, and he's conquered it, and he's trying to make a difference. His dad is now taking steps, launching off of that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
So anyway, Slate decides that, on the heels of the old man doing a good deed and calling his son, they were going to kick him in the balls too. Why Biden's marijuana pardons are not enough. No prisoners will walk free following President Biden's pardon last week of low-level marijuana offenders, as President Biden only has power to pardon federal offenders, and in recent years, the feds haven't been locking up people for possession. Meanwhile, the number of people federally convicted of trafficking and other more serious pot crimes fell from 7,000 in 2012 to just under 1,000 in 2021. It went from the Fed's most convicted drug to their least. The pardon benefits the roughly 6,500 Americans who have been previously convicted of federal possession, who have served their time, but have a conviction in their past which can block their access to employment, housing, student loans, and opportunities. Marijuana possession remains by far the country's most common drug charge. Arrests peaked at, how many people do you think in 2008 were arrested for marijuana in the United States?
Oh, I'm going to take a wild guess that has probably no bearing on reality. Let's say 25,000.
800,000.
What the?
In 2008,
Jesus.
Which is only 24 years ago. 14 years ago. Sorry,
right.
It's late. Okay. 800,000. I remember in New York City, they were clocking 50,000 arrests a year for marijuana, and they would just put you through the system if they caught you with a joint.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
it's so messed up.
As with virtually everything related to drug prosecutions, people of color were far more likely to be punished. But the vast majority of these offenders went through the state justice systems over which Biden has no control. Biden urged governors to follow his example. As they have legalized marijuana, some states have taken measures to expunge past pot offenses, but others have not. Nationwide, hundreds of thousands of people could probably be pardoned if governors heed Biden's call. So Biden does have no power over that. What he can do is reschedule the drug from a Schedule 1 to a 4 or something, and try and push through legislation while he still has a Congress to do it, legislation legalizing marijuana on the federal level. And I think it's, whatever you think of marijuana or cannabis or whatever,
or cannabinoids,
whatever you want to say about it, should people be put in jail for using it? I think no. I don't think people should be put in jail for trafficking it. I mean, some guy just got he got like 15 years for driving a bunch of weed from Humboldt County to like a southern state where it wasn't legal, and he got picked up by the feds, and he got convicted for 15 years, and that was just like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So why are we putting people in jail for that?
We shouldn't. They always talk about how overpopulated the jails are. It's always talked about that it's disproportionately, minorities that are being arrested, that are being, I'd like to say, taken advantage of by a criminal justice system that just can't stop itself
Yes.
from doing those things.
Run amok.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing. And I don't know, as far as releasing people who, were arrested 15 years ago that are rotting in jail for possession, they have to do that.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot leave those people in jail. It's not right.
It's not. Especially because now the government is the state governments are in the pot business. They're collecting.
Right. They're
in
making
California,
money.
it's like a 35% tax, that goes right into the state. Now, California, of course, I'm sure has expunged records and removed convictions, but, all the states where marijuana is legal should be doing the same thing.
I agree.
And that is Recovery in the News.
Yeah. Did I tell you I saw Jimmy Eat World? Did I already announce that on the show?
No.
I went to see a concert. I know I'm going back to Life Update, but stuff is popping into my head. I went out with my wife on like a date. It's probably one of my favorite newer bands, Jimmy Eat World. I've been following them since I'm in college. I got to meet them when I was in college because they were a small band. And my buddy, who's like a cool hipster guy, was, arranging to have these indie rock shows. And he got in touch with the Get Up Kids and Jimmy Eat World and got them to Hurley's at SUNY Potsdam, this really small club. And it was tiny. There was like 15 people there. I literally helped the guitarist off with his amp. They hung out in our dorm. They 100% would never remember me, but I remember them. And they're one of the best live bands. If you guys like Foo Fighters type stuff, man, Jimmy Eat World has some solid records and they're amazing live.
Great.
So there you go.
All right.
They paid for that spot. We're sponsored by Jimmy Eat World. So just wanted to say that.
Can we talk about ghosts now?
Weekend Weird. It is spooky season, guys. And what does that mean? There's ghosts. There's monsters. There are beasts in every corner just creeping around, trying to scare us. And that leads us to our latest Weekend Weird by Tim Banal. Ghost pushes dog across floor. I like how the title is a question. Like he's asking a question and now the article is going to answer it. A spooky piece of footage circulating online appears to show a dog being pushed by an unforeseen force that sends the puzzled pooch sliding across the floor, and the animal's owner suspects that the strange shove could have come from a ghost.
Sitting on a Roomba.
A weird video was reportedly shared on Reddit by a user who explained that the incident occurred, quote, and I quote, a few years ago, while her son was playing with their dog, Tucker. In the footage, the animal appears to be agitated by something in the room that cannot be seen when suddenly it inexplicably slides along the floor and then looks back over its shoulder, seemingly to see whatever had just pushed him. According to Tucker's owner, the family did not notice the weird occurrence until they later watched the video, though it was also not altogether surprising since their home had been the site of some eerie paranormal activity in the past. Specifically, she recalled seeing someone exit the bathroom out of the corner of her eye and, thinking it was her daughter having gotten out of bed, discovered that not only was the youngster sleeping, but there was no explanation for the eerie interloper she had just noticed. The subsequent day, her husband had a similar experience wherein he passed...
This fucking lawyer writing
I love this. Wherein he passed by their bedroom and saw what he thought was his wife. But then realized, there's so many ways you could joke on that one, but then realized that she was actually in the kitchen. The family ultimately moved out of the house, and the spooky activity did not follow them, which led the woman to muse that, and I quote, "We definitely had something else living there with us in their home." As such, she suspects that this resident spirit could have been responsible for her dog's strange slide across the floor. Skeptical observers,
Here we go.
Course,
here's the real reason.
Ends with this. Will contend that the animal's movement was a merely natural occurrence and no paranormal explanation is necessary for the purported push. Check the video. It'll be in the show notes. And,
will it? Will it really?
You know, what do you guys think? I mean, like I said, it's spooky season. I don't know if you guys know this. I grew up in a haunted house. It is legit. I'm not the only one who's experienced it. It is haunted. I even got an EVP there. I should play it on the show. An electronic voice phenomenon where you talk to the ghost and you press record.
Uh-huh.
So I can commiserate with these people having their dog being pushed by a ghost because, you know, I grew up with ghosts.
I think it's just a bunch of hillbillies looking for publicity.
Ooh.
The dog's name is what? Tucker?
Tucker.
Get in the truck, Tucker.
I named him after my favorite, Tucker Carlson. He likes UFOs. And that
hates Biden. Every time Biden's name comes on the TV, barks up a storm.
We lose 10 listeners every time I do that. And that was Week in Weird. Holy crap. That about does it for today, folks. I had a great time. Did you?
Yes, I certainly did.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for listening.
Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us a twat. You twit. Support your favorite show. That's us. Drop a 5-star review. Join our private Facebook group. Buy a t-shirt, or because we know it works now.
Yeah.
It works.
Somebody bought one.
The website works. We don't.
Extra fat people especially welcome because
we do have
a lot of triple
XLs
around. We have some smaller sizes though.
We love our big monksters. You know, we've got something for everyone.
Right.
We love meeting new monksters and chopping it up on the Facebook group. Join the Inner Sanctum at patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages for a higher level of support.
And Ryan, if you're out there,
we love you.
We love you.
I love you. Hang in there, guys. This is a tricky time, I think, for everybody, and we got to stick together. Learn from my mistakes. Reach out if you're having a rough time, or Mike. Just reach out. We're out there. The Facebook group.
Reach around,
and
I will take a reach around from anyone.
Don't kiss me in the mouth. All right, you didn't pay for that. And as we say, and finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you get something out of our little show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement.
Hit the share button and
share it.
Make people listen.
Share it. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Bye.